Welcome back. We open your eyes. Open your eyes. It is a cool, cool Thursday morning, and we're loving the conversations. Actually, we're venturing off now into our second conversation: prison reform, challenges and successes of the Belize prison system. In with us to tell us more, we have Virgilio Murillo, who is a CEO at the Kolbe Foundation, and Dr. Jarrod Sadulski. Nice to meet him, researcher, and of course, lecturer at a university. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
And I just want to say I'll say it now. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Happy New Year to you too.
You know, prison reform is definitely something that I think we should try to continue to have conversations with. Because people hear about going to prison and it is the dungeon of doom, forgetting that it's a reform spot. It is a spot to try and get you back to society, you know, from which once you came. Challenges and successes of the Belize Central Prison. Let's get to that. Where are we at this particular point? Where were we? Where are we, and then where do we want to go?
Well, John, good morning to you guys, and thanks for having us. I want to start off by saying that, and I do want to thank Dr. Sadulski for teaming up with the Kolbe Foundation in trying to help us as we strive towards reintegrating productive citizens into society.
Yeah.
Prison really is, like you said, an opportunity for you to reform and be sent back into your society, I guess properly rehabilitated, and going out back trying to be productive and law abiding.
Yes.
That is the essence of what prisons are for. Challenges and successes, we do have quite a lot of challenges, no doubt about it. Of course, we always have the issues with staff, trying to man the prison with the appropriate staff, the appropriate numbers, as well as the appropriate caliber of people, because working in a prison is not an easy job.
I would not imagine.
These guys weren't sent there for singing too loudly in church. We know that by now. All right? And they come with their issues. And I keep telling people that prisons are a microcosm of society.
Yes.
Whatever happens in a society happens in a prison. You know, and they play their games. And that is exactly what Dr. Sadulski came to assist us with. With trying to see how we can train our staff in terms of dealing with issues such as escapes, riots, and hostage taking. We've never had those things, aside from the riot that took place last year. And remember that escape, that mass escape with those 3 serious guys that took place in May. So we had our challenges last year, no doubt about it, in terms of escape and in terms of the little disturbance, I would call it, that took place. And we managed to quell it in about 10 minutes, but maybe it was by the grace of God that happened. So today, Dr. Sadulski definitely is offering and volunteering his time and his resources to come and equip our staff so that should these things happen in the future, we should be in a better position to deal with it.
All right.
Yeah. Dr. Sadulski, you visited the Belize prison as a part of your research, right?
I did.
And you're a lecturer in criminal justice at the American Military University.
Right.
So I'm assuming that you were comparing what we do in Belize to other countries in this region.
I am.
Tell me what your initial findings were, or what your first impression was when you entered into the compound.
A sense of calmness. There's one thing that sets Belize Central Prison aside from the other prisons that I've researched in the area. To put it in perspective, just in the last couple weeks, we've had a prison escape of 75 inmates in Paraguay. Within the last 2 weeks, we've had 37 inmates murdered in 2 riots that occurred in Honduras.
Wow.
So as we look at what's going on in the neighboring countries and in the general region, these issues of escapes and riots and hostage-taking situations are prevalent and are a problem. So Belize Central Prison, because of its Christian-based operating model, which I believe should be the model for prison management throughout the region. There's such a sense of calmness there. That coupled with rehabilitation. As I walk through the prison, inmates would look at me. They would look me in the eyes. You know, there was a sense of meaning in their lives there because of what Kolbe Foundation is doing. And it's nothing like I've seen anywhere else.
Now, when you use those numbers, though, is it comparative? Because if we have 3 escaped out of 5,000, how many? No.
The prison population?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we last year we were around 1,100 when that escape took place.
1,100, sorry, yeah. So if you look at 3 out of 11 and 75 out of how many in Paraguay, I mean, what's the comparison we're using here? So we don't mislead.
Well, and that brings up another great point. That actually speaks to the low recidivism rate of Belize Central Prison, which is around 10%, which is an unheard of reoffending recidivism rate in really, I believe, in the world. It's a tremendous thing. So we have a lower prison population in Belize Central Prison because of the successes in rehabilitation through the faith-based approaches that are being taken. There are higher populations, and that's a great point. You know, but some of the issues that I'd like to point out is in the 75 that escaped, according to some of the government officials, that information that's been published in the media, some of them walked out of the gate.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
is in Paraguay, not Belize.
Right,
So people
this is in
get-
Paraguay, right, right, very important. So, you know, there may be larger prison populations, but it really speaks to the effectiveness of the management at Belize Central Prison that we're not having incidents, maybe even at a smaller scale.
Okay. That's,
And talking about the recidivism, there is a slide there, there's a line chart slide, I would want you to show it. I think it's all the way to the...
just so we make sure people understand, recidivism is whether or not they return
To prison.
back to the institution,
Right.
to the prison.
That slide right there.
Yeah.
Let's look at that slide right there. That gives you an idea how the prison population has been over the years. If you notice the
So we
green,
peaked at 15.
we've peaked, and that was what you call a yearly average. That's a yearly average. The prison population, as far as my recollection goes, I think it almost reached 1,700 at one point in a particular year, and it would have been that very same year right there. If you notice, ever since then, though, there's been a continuous decline in terms of population, and that is what makes us feel good about the recidivism, because at the end of the day, it's all in the numbers if you look at it.
Yeah, definitely.
But can you look at that in isolation, though? Because you can't separate the justice system from it as well, where we know that convictions are really what gives you the population at the prison.
I understand that. However, what we're saying is that we can only do something for you when you reach prison. So if you don't reach prison, and I don't know how you gauge that, I just know that when it comes, because this recidivism that we're talking about is recidivism as it relates to imprisonment, and that is where, and that is remand and convicted.
Okay.
Because I'm saying to you that the overall population includes both the remanded and the convicted prisoners.
Okay.
That's the average population you're looking at there.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that you see all of these discharges, people get sent to prison for a little bit, remanded for a crime. There are times when they're not convicted, they are acquitted of the charges, those kinds of things.
Okay.
Some of them serve their little sentence, whether it's 3 months to a year or 5 years, whatever the case may be. They go on parole, remission, whatever.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that they're not coming up, and it shows in the numbers because the numbers aren't going up.
Yeah.
They're staying down despite the crime situation in our country.
I think one of the things that we shed light on for a number of years, I don't recollect the year as to when the decriminalization of the 10 grams of marijuana.
That would have been in 2017.
Okay, so that's in
17.
2017. What are we seeing now? Because I think that decriminalization actually would be one of help to the prison system or the prison for not having people in prison for 10 grams. How is that playing out?
It does have it has a little effect, but not a significant effect, so to speak, because what we saw is a little increase as it relates to burglaries and theft and these kinds of things. There's a slide there that will show that. If you could go back a little bit so I can explain it to you. Go back. Right there. Go for it. Look at that. That slide compares 2019 with 2018. And over the last 3 years, I've been seeing where the imprisonment as it relates to crimes of dishonesty,
Yeah.
which is robbery, burglary, and theft. Over the last 3 years, I can tell you with certainty that we have seen that number rising. Similarly with immigration offenses. We've seen that constantly climbing for the last 3 years too. So one of the things that stood out, if you notice, there was a 21% increase in terms of firearm offenses last year. You see that drug offenses, those are the drug possession. Some of those things are for possession of pipes. I mean, crack pipes. It's not necessarily the possession of the 10 grams.
Yeah.
And that is why I'm saying that it has a little impact.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanna go back to what we are finding so far, and Dr. Sadulski's findings, and how we are moving forward with that. So the key thing is, and I know a lot of people are very critical of it. There's still people out there who say some criminals shouldn't even go to a jail because it's a good life, right? And what you're saying is that you have found that the environment at Kolbe has been a positive one versus those in the region, because of the other integrated programs that they have.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you're not seeing that in other places.
Not to this extent.
Okay.
Not to the extent. The first time that I visited the prison, I heard faith-based music being played through the prison speakers. There's church being held there 7 days a week. There are different programs, such as through the ARC program, that is effective to where inmates are serving out the remainder of their term, completing programs that are helping them deal with what brought them there to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
But what, you as a professional, Dr. Sadulski, what are some of the challenges that you noticed there at the Belize Central Prison that we know that could be corrected at a very good rate?
Well, it's something that that honestly it exists in many prisons as well. And Mr. Murillo and I have become very close over the last year working together. And one of the things that I've come to understand is the issue of resources. Whether it's equipment, whether it's personnel, whether it's financial, resources are really something that help promote what the prison's pursuing and trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Now, when you look at criminal justice, one of the key things to be able to keep in mind is that the prison, and Mr. Murillo and the responsibility has there is just one element in really what rehabilitation is, and even just the entire process. It goes through police, then through the courts, then to the prison, and then reintegration back into society. When you look at the full cycle, how would you assess that?
Well, I've met many Belize police officers. Matter of fact, last year when we were here, we did a police stress training seminar with the police officers. I met many wonderful police officers that are going out every day, working hard, doing their jobs. I've also met some in the judicial branch, and it's been my perception that everybody is working hard with the opportunities that they have to make everything work and for the 3 different programs to work.
The challenge, I think, or what I have heard very often is looking at the reintegration process. A lot of times people come out of the prison, out to Kolbe, whether on remand, whether time served, and they cannot get a job. So, you equip them with skills, you provide education, but they still come out without opportunities.
Right. One of the things that I noticed on that initial visit was the amount of inmates that are engaged in different trades activities. There's a fully functional woodworking shop. There's a 220 acres, most of which consists of agriculture. And so the best way, in my opinion, to solve that problem is what Kolbe Foundation is already doing, which is giving them skills that they're able to go into a piggery, into a woodworking shop, into trades that they've developed in the prison. Matter of fact, the guard stands have been made by the inmates, which has provided masonry skills. And those are really the best way. That, coupled with getting over the stigma of hiring convicted felons, that's also another issue.
Every year, people get out of prison with certain skills. This year, we're looking forward to releasing another few prisoners who have certainly met all the requirements as it relates to rehabilitation and reintegration.
Wow.
And I know for certain that there are some with wonderful skills, of making things with their hands. I mean, I'm talking about woodwork particularly. the only encouragement I can give to the public is to support these guys with their products when they produce them.
Of course.
Because
But we need a display area.
Yes.
You know, this is from the Kolbe Foundation, and I think that if we go that route, then we these guys would eventually see, you know what, I could be a very productive citizen. It would be very disturbing for them to come on out and say I'm worth nothing to
produce and cannot
yes.
sell.
And
Right.
so this is one of the avenues I think we need to go. We need there must be a display area. But while we have these guys in there, what are the skills that they're gravitating more to?
Well, like Dr. Jarrod just alluded to, there's always a stigma, and I keep talking about the stigma. And I understand, I do understand the public. Creole have a saying, we say, man will get snake bite run when he see maklala, and I understand, it's kind of hard. How do you regain that trust? It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Right? So when a businessman is very cautious about hiring somebody who had gone to prison for robbery or burglary, you could understand.
Yeah.
And that is why we're pushing the whole issue of trying to teach them to produce.
Yeah.
Because if a guy, I'm sorry, the La Ruta Maya purchases, every year they support us by purchasing all those little canoes that they issue for the La Ruta Maya race. And we feel so happy about that. That's the kind of support we need.
Yeah.
Because who produces those things? It is the very same inmates.
Yes.
And I'm saying that when that guy or those prisoners who produces those little canoes comes out into society, because they're going to come out into society.
They will. Yeah.
They need that same support. Whilst they might not necessarily want to continue buying it from the prison, they could go and buy it from these guys so that they could keep their business going.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of hard. The stigma does affect them. And that is why we are trying to push the whole issue of teaching them to produce things.
So it's interesting what you're saying, because the woodwork business especially I think is one of the booming business that you've established. I know the coffins are also something that a lot of people purchase from Kolbe Foundation as well. But people are purchasing or accessing the skills of the inmates through the Kolbe, kind of like altruistic, I'm participating in helping, but not after they come out of prison.
Yes, and that is what we want to push. We want to encourage them these little guys are going to set up their business and just support them.
Interesting.
Buy from them.
Dr. Sadulski, I don't know, the name is just there. You have given kudos to the Belize Central Prison because you've never seen anything like it. You're a professional. You've worked a lot of places, a lot of prisons. What are you going to take away from here and take on with you when you go to your next destination?
Well, one of the things that I would really like to emphasize is making others aware of what Kolbe Foundation and Belize Central Prison is doing. I think that that's critical. One, my hope is to bring other resources to the prison that can come and help support what's going on, especially in terms of rehabilitation. So one of the things that, the takeaways that I have are, one, to make awareness of what's going on here, because again, it's my opinion that what's going on at the Belize Central Prison should be the prison operating model.
You're saying it should be a model. And I do want to take the time to say that, because a lot of times we look at what's happening in Belize and we think it can be so much better. But what you're saying is, based on your research, Belize has one of the best models for prisons that can be replicated in other places.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Especially within the region, from what I've seen. And also, the other thing that I want to emphasize is the importance of training. So one of the goals that we have this week is we're going to conduct training on the topics that Mr. Murillo selected. Yeah. And fortunately, we haven't had a major issue of a hostage-taking situation, but we're going to deliver training on how to handle hostage situations, both inmate on inmate as well as inmate on guard, as well as we're going to go over riots and escapes. And my goal is not to tell anybody what should be done. My goal is to say, hey, this is what other prisons are doing around the world in handling these three problems. If there's some things that you may be able to pick and take from that may implement well into your policies, that's ultimately my goal.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, the last time you were here, you were talking about stress-reducing workshops. And I say that thinking you have such a calm demeanor as well, and how critical. In fact, the police department spoke so highly of that training, because No one's thinking of the level of stress that a rehabilitation officer or a police officer may be going through.
Right, and matter of fact, I want to make sure that I mention how grateful I am to Galen University for hosting that. It wouldn't have been possible without them, and they've been absolutely wonderful during the process. So you're absolutely right. Matter of fact, in the training at the prison this week, we're also going to touch on stress management for corrections officers. We're going to touch on PTSD. So when a critical incident, a traumatic incident does occur, these are what you can expect as far as stress responses physiologically, and these are ways that have been proven effective in managing them.
And so if you were to identify three, I'll give you the tasks, 3 reasons why you say that Belize has a very good model for a prison, what would those be?
The first one is because it is faith-based. That is what I credit the success of the Belize prison to, and it's throughout the prison. It's you can see God at work throughout the prison. So to me, that's number 1. 2, it is the mutual respect between the staff and the inmates. It's incredible. Every day that I've gone to the prison, I've seen inmates communicating with the staff, and there's not a top-down approach. There's a mutual respect there. So that's something that I've seen in every visit that I've been there. And thirdly, I would say the rehabilitation program, in particular the ARC program, I think is highly effective, and I think that that's really one of the biggest successes of the prison.
All right. Now, on the flip side, what would you say is a weakness that you've identified that can be remedied?
Yes.
Okay. Staff shortages is a challenge, and training. Training is key. There's a lot of excellent training that's being done, but I think that's an area that we can improve, that we can strengthen.
And that's why you're focusing your task with the prison.
This year's visit to Belize.
This year's visit in training.
Correct.
All right. And as we said, it is riot management, handling escapes.
And hostage-taking situations from both inmate to inmate as well as inmate to guard.
We're not putting out suggestions here of what the inmates can do, because we don't get very often.
No, we're not going to go into the details.
Okay.
We won't do that.
Yeah.
Well, we need to know what to do when that time comes, if and when that time comes.
And this research is basically what I'm presenting is just research that I've done throughout different regions of the world, and just showing how other prisons have handled these types of issues in hopes that that maybe something can be taken from it.
Mr. Murillo,
I would just go ahead, ask the question.
while we continue to strive for success there at the Kolbe Foundation, are there any new programs that were implemented, or are there any new programs that you're planning on implementing to enhance how things are working there?
Well, last year, no. We're still carrying on with what we have already established, because those programs are working.
Yeah.
Listen, as it relates to programs, you would want to implement just about everything.
Yeah.
But resources is a problem. Getting the people to come in and train is a problem, because not many, you don't find many Jarrod Sadulskis around, that are going to take of their time and their resources to come and volunteer.
Yeah.
You don't have that happening. I mean, what we have a lot of sponsorship on is certainly the different faith-based ministries in the country, because quite a lot of churches visit the prison, and they go and they offer their services to their followers, if you want to call it that, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but program-wise, like I say, we are pushing on with the ARC program, which looks after your your addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs,
drug addiction,
drug treatment, and then we do have the RRC, which is the ones for the remanded inmates who are mostly into gangs and affiliating with gangs and doing gang things. So that addresses that issue. I wanted to ask that they show some of those pictures that I there were some pictures.
They were showing quite a bit already.
Go to the PowerPoint that I just brought, the recent one.
Yeah.
And I want to go through some pictures, because I want to show you some of the challenges that we have at the prison.
What are you talking about specifically?
That right
you tell
there.
us. Yeah.
This is one of our challenges.
All right. So what is this?
That is
Smuggling.
a butane tank that the prisoners use to, well, actually 2 butane tanks that they managed to smuggle drugs and cell phone into the prison.
How do they get a butane?
Well, it's a privilege for those who are pretty much contributing to. It's a privilege. It's catered for under the prison rules. You can get privilege. Everything in a prison is privileges, not rights. So if you, let's say, you're contributing positively to the industry and the well-being or the welfare of the prison and prisoners, you get an opportunity.
Yeah.
This is just some of
Holes
the
in
way
the
they
wall.
hide, they bore holes in the wall. So that's a DVD player where they hid the battery. What is being covered there in that napkin is a battery for a cell phone. If you notice, that is one of the books from the library.
Yeah.
They actually cut
That's
it out.
straight out of
to
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
Right? I thought the same thing when I saw that this morning.
to hide their cell phone after they finish using it.
Okay.
That's the pile of drugs that were found. But I'm just trying to show you the challenges that we have with these drugs and cell phones in
Yeah.
prison.
You know, and I think that naturally, you said it very clearly before, that it is only a smaller version of what will take place in the wider society where
Absolutely.
people are going to try and push boundaries. But I have a different question. You know, was it a few years ago, Belize was featured in the Netflix series, World's Toughest Prisons.
Yeah.
How did we go from one of the world's toughest prisons to
to-
one of the model prisons?
Well,
Good.
I think when
I'm
it comes
trying to figure out how we got there.
yeah, I had my concerns about that title because I never saw the prison as that. But I guess Netflix is all about making
It
money.
is entertainment,
Yeah, it's
agreed.
entertainment. And, you know, when I spoke to the people who wanted to do the series or documentary, I expressed that concern to them via email. I said to them, hey, I don't agree with it, you know. But they're saying, oh, but you get an opportunity to at least show your rehabilitation. And I think it kind of, as bad as it may have seemed, at the end of the day, I think what it really did, it really showed our rehabilitation efforts. And you said earlier that people think that the prison is a holiday camp. And
Well, I was
that kind
about
of
to
stuff.
get to that question because I know people are watching right now and saying, listen, I don't want to hear about how much you're investing in prisoners. And this is not a sentiment that everyone shares, but there are people who believe that you have robbed me of my loved one. You have robbed me of my belongings. You've done something that warranted you to serve some sort of punishment. And for many, when they hear of rehabilitation programs and learning new skills, it's like an extended, all expenses paid summer camp that the rest of us aren't privileged to. So how do you counter these sentiments?
And that is part of the problem everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because perception is a thing, you know. And you know one of the reasons why we don't resolve issues a lot of time is because of your perception against my perception, and I guess the person with the loudest mouth wins. That is my thing.
Yeah.
Because people need to understand that deprivation of your liberty is the punishment. And I believe even when the judge is giving you a sentence, I think the judge takes into consideration all the factors, all the mitigating factors, and that is why the judge arrives at a particular sentence, because he would tell you, okay, you get 10 years, you become eligible for parole after you've served 5. I believe even in the judge's mind, he thinks that, or she thinks that after 5 years, you would have gotten the message.
Yeah.
Because even if you leave prison on parole, remember you're still a prisoner serving your sentence out in the society, you're just not behind bars.
Yes.
So it boils down to perception. Rehabilitation works. Treat people like animal, you're going to be sending animals back out into society.
Yeah, that's right.
And by international standards, the prison is mandated to send people back out properly reformed.
Yes.
There's no guarantee that every single individual that has a stint with the prison will come back out reformed, but we have seen where it has.
That's a critical point, I think, that you just said there. You know, what do you do if you are only having a punitive approach to a prisoner and they are released, they serve the time? What are you then putting back into the society?
As hostile person. Doc, you want to say something on that towards that?
I completely agree, and that's that really brings up a good point. Is I could certainly understand the sentiments of the family members and of the victims, but there is a human component to this, and that somebody that goes and does their time, and is reintegrated in society, we have two choices. We could either reintegrate them back into society to where they're going to come right back because they didn't, the prison was just, terrifying for them, or we can rehabilitate them and then end up with a 10% recidivism rate.
Yeah. See, and I think that that's what people think. I think people think that it should be terrifying, that you don't want to break the log and so you don't go back there.
And I think it's also important to put in perspective, it is no holiday there. I mean, it is prison, and it is...
One of the things, and I think, you know, I'm blessed to have been at the prison for the last 17 years, because remember, I've seen just about everything as it relates to prison. You remember back in 2009 was the last killing in the prison. And yeah, up to now, nobody has been convicted for that murder. The prisoner was called out for a phone call. He went to take the call, and whilst he's making the phone call, the guy just pushed a toothbrush shank in his neck, and he was dead.
Wow.
Then don't forget the thing that happened in Panama a couple of days ago, where the AK-47 and pistols were smuggled into the prison, and 13 gang members were shot up in the prison, where the president himself got involved, because he's saying in no certain terms that these weapons didn't drop out of thin air.
Somebody took them in.
We had that situation back in 2006 when they killed a prisoner at the maximum security area of the prison with a 38 special. That was smuggled in by a guard.
Yeah.
You know, so prisons are to be safe. At the end of the day, our mandate is care, custody, and control. You know, and we have to stick to that.
And in terms of your own evaluation, because that's a key point, you know, a lot of, not a lot, some of the things that would get smuggled into the prison, or some of the things that have taken place, and I know you have some pending court case as well, with a rape incident, they can only happen with the involvement of some of the staff there. So what do you do as the leader of this organization to perhaps do as many checks and balances for the people that are allowed to come to work with the population?
Well, certainly we, every time we learn from these situations, because they always have a lesson to teach. And I will maintain that we don't foster a culture of what you call deliberate indifference towards prisoners, none at all. Or we push the whole issue of care, custody, and control. And that is broken down to the staff every time during training. We emphasize those things. I am glad that the prison at least is not being flagged for human rights abuses that, as it used to be in the past. Because, you know, in the past I remember these guys would get their shin broken with a baton. In our prison, we don't walk around with a baton. You know, sorry. I mean, it's a weapon, and it can really severely hurt a prisoner. So the mutual respect that Dr. Jarrod is talking about, that is what we push a lot. Treat people with respect for their inherent dignity. Yeah. And you have no problem there. I was just saying to him coming down to here that when I meet these boys in the streets, I mean, so I can't remember each and every person because, almost 2,000 people is coming to prison every year. If you look at that statistics that I shared with you, we had 1,975 people coming to prison last year. Wow. I mean, 800 remanded, 926 remanded, and 1,049 remanded, and 926 convicted. That's a lot of people. Yeah, it is. Every year. So how could I possibly remember each and every soul that I meet in the streets? You know, and they would come to me and feel so good about themselves that they have stayed out for the last 5 years. And I feel good about that. Yeah, of course. Because certainly we had an impact on that person.
Well, it simply means that the prison system worked for them.
Absolutely.
So they need to, you know, now they're somebody in a society. But it takes society to accept them for who they are and try to get away from the stigma and discrimination.
Like I tell you, the perception is a thing.
Well, and I think that's a good closing point. So we talk of what you're doing in the prison, and I think that having Dr. Sadulski here talking about what seems to be working and where you can strengthen, there's also looking at, once again, the integration issue. How important is getting something formalized? Because you can have a well-rehabilitated person, but once they come back out into society in the same environment that led them to go in, there are going to be challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So what's the call on the wider community and looking at reintegration process?
Well, in my opinion, it is based on the skills that they bring out of the prison whenever they come. So we'll go back to the trade skills. And then also, you know, if it's addictions that led them to the crimes that they committed, it's also looking, hey, did this inmate complete the ARC program? You know, that's a major milestone for inmates to be able to go through that program. They get a certificate. It's a milestone for them in them taking that step to overcome what led them there to begin with. So, as business owners and as community, I think those are things that should be looked at.
Yeah, and when you say art, you mean the drug program.
The addiction
I wanna
rehab
be clear,
center, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you have you have your training coming up this week.
We do.
With the officers from
Actually,
the
it
prison.
starts now.
It starts now.
Yes,
Okay.
as soon as we reach back.
All right.
Okay.
There may be a riot in here very soon if we don't go to that break. But I know you have a question, right?
I do. And
Yeah.
I came all the way to Belize. I have one request. I understand that you sing opera. I saw it on television.
Me?
Yes. And I was wondering if you could close us in some opera, because I saw it on TV last night.
Oh my God, are you guys serious?
Yes.
How am I supposed to do that?
Me?
That's just a spread of women. I know you're up to it. You're up to it. How did you know about that request?
Somebody scandal him.
Because it was on television, John.
I watched it yesterday.
Somebody scandal him, huh?
Oh my God, Stephanie, you into it too? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
All right, Henry's giving the countdown. There you go.
So what am I supposed to do again?
Just end the show with an opera voice.
Oh my God, you guys are serious. Okay, we shall take that break and be back with good conversation. We'll take the break. We'll be right back. We've got much more coming up.
All right. There you go. Good sport.
You